I'm thrilled to have you join me on this special episode of the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. It's truly an honor to have Matthew Berry join me. I really think you're going to enjoy this interview. And I'm sure you know Matthew Berry is a New York Times best-selling author of the book Fantasy Life. And you can find him on Fantasy Football Happy Hour at noon Eastern Time on Peacock, and every NFL Sunday he hosts Fantasy Football pregame with Matthew Berry at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Peacock as well. And of course, Matthew will be in Kansas City with his Football Night in America teammates to kick off the NFL season at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, September 7th, ahead of the Chiefs-Lions game on NBC and Peacock. But the 2023 NFL season is here, and I can't imagine any better way to kick off the fantasy football draft season than with Matthew Berry. Let's do this.
This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we are celebrating the fantasy football experience with the most influential pioneer and ambassador of fantasy sports that the world has ever seen. He has forged his own path, climbing the mountain and leading the fantasy sports industry to new heights with every move he makes. He is indeed living his best fantasy life. It's the talented Mr. Roto himself, Matthew Berry. Great to see you, my friend.
Kevin, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor to have you here. You've been so great to me over the years. You know, we first met back at ESPN in 2017 on your turf, and
Yeah.
I've seen you multiple zip codes since then. I've enjoyed every moment. Yep.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you were Commissioner of the Year, right?
I was indeed. Yep. It was it's a good time and special memories for sure for me. But let's not bury the lead here. You and I both experienced a life-changing event this summer, and we got to talk about it. So
Okay.
we share a lot of things in common, love for fantasy, but we take a lot of pride in being girl dads. And
Yep.
it leads me to ask, where does the Taylor Swift Eras Tour rank when it comes to all-time events that you've attended?
It's right up there. We had a great time. We had a absolute great time. So my daughters are, I have twin daughters that are 11 years old. They are hardcore Swifties. And they asked, they were like, can we go to the Eras Tour? Can we go to the Eras Tour? And so normally what we do is, and we hadn't done it for a year or two because of the pandemic, we like to take them to Orlando, right? We like to take them to Universal Studios and Disney and the whole thing. And so we like to do like kind of a week there. And we missed the last 2 years for doing it because of the pandemic. And so I said, well, we can do one of two things. I said, we can either go to Orlando for a week, and go to all the theme parks and we'll go to the water parks and the whole thing, or we can go see Taylor Swift. And they both immediately, without hesitation, Taylor Swift. Okay. So now I'm like, oh, okay, now I've got to figure out tickets. So luckily, a friend of a friend knew somebody, and I was able to, I think, literally my greatest dad flex of all time, getting us tickets. We went to the show, and it was fantastic. Honestly, I knew, first off, I knew more songs than I thought I did. I crammed for it. Kevin, I basically decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to treat this like a fantasy draft. I'm going to cram for this concert like I've never crammed before. So I spent a week leading up to the concert doing nothing but listening to Taylor Swift music. So, and my wife was just like, I'm not listening, whatever. We're going for the girls. So we both go, and both my wife and I had an absolute blast. I knew a lot more songs than I thought I would. My girls had an absolute great time. The atmosphere at a Swift concert is really wonderful and loving. Like they trade the bracelets and the whole thing. And it's just really kind of a great community feel. She's terrific. She's a master. Even if you're not a fan of the music, like just every song is a production, costume changes and dancers and lights. And it's every show. It's a production. It's a really theatrical experience. And, what was exciting for me, Kevin, is I don't think I've ever seen my daughters that happy. And they knew that they were there because of me and because of my wife. And like they associated with that with me. So like strong core memory stuff. It was great. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would absolutely see her again. The show was wonderful, but most importantly was me seeing my daughters that happy and just how much they love. They're still talking about it. This was June,
Yeah.
but they're still talking about it.
Yeah, my daughter and my wife went in July, and again, still same story. I'm just amazing. I feel like that Swiftie passion and fanaticism kind of reminds me of those that play fantasy, right?
Yes, 100%, 100%, and you will see me writing about this sooner than later. So
Exciting.
I completely agree. There are a lot of parallels
For
in
sure.
sort of the community feel, the fanaticism, the you know the good vibes.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of the bright lights and the spotlight, describe your emotions as you stepped onto the sidelines at the Hall of Fame game last year, and again just a few weeks ago on NBC's Football Night in America.
Yeah, super exciting. I mean, nervous. Like, I've been on national TV for 15 years, and it was the first time that I can remember that I was nervous. Like, it takes a lot to get me nervous these days. But my first time on NBC, national TV, I'm on a field, seeing football. Like, there's Trevor Lawrence running, jogging by me, and because the game was Jaguars Raiders, and I see, there's Devontae Adams, and it was nerve wracking, honestly. I'm just like, don't screw up, and I'm trying to think about what I want to say, and I want to try to be concise because we don't have a lot of time. You got to move on, and it's the first time NBC is seeing me. And the truth is that my audience, while ESPN is massive and it's a big audience, and narrow is not the right word to say, but like it's a specific audience, right? The people that watch ESPN are generally hardcore sports fans. And that NBC is a much more broader audience, that they get people that tune. Like, my wife is not a football fan, but my wife watches Sunday Night Football and has for years and years and years. It's like, oh, it's Sunday night, I'll watch the game. She watches it with me. You know what I mean? But like, she couldn't tell you, she's not watching the fourth game on CBS on a Sunday at 1, but she always watches Sunday Night Football, and we watch it together. So there's when you look at the demographic breaks down, it's much more. It's much more evenly balanced between men and women. Yeah. It's just a broader audience on NBC. And so it was my exposure for the first time to this audience, and first time doing fantasy. We're not, a lot of times what happens, Kevin, and is like, we see this a lot of times on these broadcasts, it's fantasy advice, but it's disguised. They try to couch it so that, the real fans aren't scared off by fantasy talk or whatever. And this was going to be I'm getting on there and I'm like, listen, I'm going to talk about the fact that I think Jalen Hurts' ADP is too low, and I'm going to talk about his range of outcomes, and I'm going to, I'm going to nerd it up, and and so and my co-host Chris Sims is and famously not a massive at the time, wasn't still had some questions about Jalen Hurts as an NFL quarterback. I think it's fair to say he had questions. So anyway, I took a big swing, and I basically said that I thought Hurts had number one quarterback in fantasy potential, and that he could take a Josh Allen leap into year 3. And obviously that ended up working out. Jalen made me look good. Thank you, Jalen Hurts, forever. So it was cool, but so it was nerve wracking, but it was also, honestly, Kevin, it was kind of dream come true, pinch me sort of stuff. It was one of the reasons why I left ESPN. I wanted to be part of NFL coverage. It was important to me that I think fantasy needs to be a part of NFL coverage. When you talk about the NFL, when you think about how fans engage with the game, obviously fantasy and sports betting are big ways that people engage with the game. And that wasn't currently represented on a bunch of different, that wasn't represented on, on a major platform, on any of the NFL partners. And so it was important for me to do that. So it was all these emotions. I know I'm just sort of talking, but the truth is, Kevin, it was all these emotions because it was nerve wracking, and it was exciting, and I was proud. I felt like I was sort of breaking a barrier there.
Yeah.
And I also knew that so many people were questioning when I left ESPN. There was sort of a surprise, and people were like, wait, why'd you leave ESPN? You had a pretty good gig at ESPN. Why would somebody leave ESPN? Why would somebody choose to do that? And so it was just I wanted to prove that there's a reason why, because I'm going to be part of Football Night in America. And so I wanted to sort of represent the fantasy community well, right? Because here I am now literally on the sideline of an NFL game before an actual NFL game, giving fantasy advice. I wanted to so you're trying to make it, mainstream, but not not so mainstream that fantasy players are like, yeah, I don't need you to tell me that Patrick Mahomes is good to draft. So it's a balance that you're always struggling with, is wanting to appeal to a very large, broad mainstream audience, but also have enough fantasy advice. And so just a lot of emotions went through me, but
I bet.
It was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you did the fantasy community proud for sure. And obviously you got the full circle deal with Roto World and, with the start of your career. And on top of that, you've gone from Crocodile Dundee 3 to having an Australian co-host on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour show on Peacock.
Yeah. Yes, very true. Thank you. Yes. Jay does a great job for us. Despite my favorite, he is officially my favorite Australian.
I bet.
Chris Hemsworth. I like Chris Hemsworth a lot. Maybe he's second.
Okay. Okay. Well, you appear to be having a great time, obviously living that fantasy life. I've seen you, again, in many different settings. And one thing's always consistent with you. It's your genuine desire to help people. Personally, one of my favorite memories goes back to the National Fantasy Football Convention back in 2018 in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm standing out in the crowd, and you're up on stage putting together a mock draft with all the athletes. And you see me in the crowd. You gesture for me to come up on stage. And then you proceed to anoint me as the honorary commissioner of the event. And I feel like it's just a great example of how you're always just looking to help people. Every time I see you, like at an event, you're one-on-one with someone, listening to them, sharing your wisdom, insight. It's, in front of the camera, behind the camera, it's all the same. Where does your passion to help others come from? And was there someone along the way in your professional journey that instilled that in you?
Yeah, so there's a few answers to that question. Thank you. That's important to me. So I take that as a great compliment. It's important to me. Number one is, I think, just my father, right? I mean, and my mother, and just how I was raised. I was always raised to believe, like, if you can be helpful, you should be. It's the right thing to do, and try to help people that are less fortunate than you. Try to help people that just be a good person, right? It's just good karma. Put that out into the universe. And so I grew up with that example. My parents are thankfully still alive and still very active in the community, and they donate a ton of money. They donate a ton of time. And my mother has been, a chair of the United Way, and she's on many boards, many charitable boards, as is my father. And so they do a lot for their community. So that's the first one. Secondly is just throughout my career, there have been people that have helped me. Like, I haven't been able to get to where I was. There was somebody that advocated for me at ESPN. There was somebody that advocated for me at NBC. There've been, you could ask me about any particular thing that I've done, and I could say yes. Like, I didn't get to that place alone. Somebody helped me. Somebody gave me advice. Somebody advocated for me. Somebody pushed for me. Somebody told me about the opportunity. No journey is alone. So part of me is also wanting to give back, right? People helped me, pay it forward, right? So somebody helped me, and then I'm going to help some people, and then hopefully they help other people in the future. And the other thing is just sort of the right thing to do is such a cliche, but it sort of is. I will tell you, so one of the investors of Fantasy Life is a guy named George Pine. And so George Pine is the CEO of Bruin Capital, which has well over $1 billion in funding available to it. It's a market cap of over $1 billion. It's got many investments. And George Pine is the former, I want to say, COO of NASCAR, and I believe he's the former president of IMG. His son was quarterback at Notre Dame, Drew Pine. His family's played in the NFL. So George is just for lack of a better way to describe it, just a very important person, very well known, immensely successful businessman, big family guy as well. And I've gotten to know him over the last handful of years. And I'm an advisor. Actually, I'm honored. I'm an advisor for Bruin Capital, so I'm on their advisory board. And George personally is invested in Fantasy Life. And the first time I met with George, the first time we got introduced by a mutual friend, and we had lunch together, and we really hit it off. But what was interesting is the way he started his lunch. And since now that I know George, I've been in other meetings with George, with other people. And what I found is that the way he opened our lunch is not an accident. It's how he lives his life. And so we sit down to lunch. And so here I am, I'm meeting this guy who's, controls over $1 billion. he's probably a billionaire. I don't know, but like if he's not a billionaire, he's very close. Like he's a very wealthy man. He's a very important man. He's run big businesses. And so here's this guy, right? And I'm me. And I sit down to him. And the first thing George says to me, he goes, "How can I help?" That's his first question. That's always his first question. How can I help? And he means it. He's genuine about that. And so to answer your question, like, and so I really eye-opening moment for me. And so I've instinctually, to your point, Kevin, always tried to help and it's important to me to be loyal to my team and the men and women that have worked for me, with me, and that kind of stuff. And I've tried really hard to promote people within the fantasy industry, personally, privately, professionally. But I just think it's important to help. And you never know when you might need help. And so it's good when it doesn't feel like you're asking for something, when it feels like it's a mutual relationship. And so that's important to me. And so I try to just, when I meet people, how can I help? Let me know how I can help. And if I can, I will. And that's worked out well for me in my career.
That's great. Now you also are very adamant about trying to help expand diversity of voices in the fantasy sports industry. Why is that so important to you?
Well, I think it's important just to have a wide. I think it creates a better conversation. It creates more. Trying to think of the best way to put this. It creates a better conversation. I think it's more important when we have more voices heard. I think it's more reflective of the world we live in. So I think that, and it is a fairly insular world, fantasy sports and sports betting. And it is primarily dominated. We've gotten better at it, but you mentioned some of the conferences we've been at, some of the fantasy sports conferences. It used to be like you'd go there and there were literally like 3 women, three women and like 2 people of color. And you'd be like, it was a lot of white men in between 30 and 50. And that's not good for anyone, right? And it's no disrespect to the people that were there, but it's just like, it's not reflective of our country. And there's nothing better than having a wide range and a diverse range of voices and opinions, because it helps you it gets you outside of your own worldview and your own experiences, and you see things through. And I think it'll make you a better business person. It'll make you a better content creator, to be able to see things through other people's eyes. And by the way, and I think that diversity gets thrown around a lot. And I think that it's important to recognize what diversity is. And diversity means all people. It doesn't mean one specific type of person. It means old, it means young, it means men, it means women, it means all races, it means all religions, all backgrounds, all levels of experience. We have, over at Fantasy Life, we have a 27-year-old woman and we have a 56-year-old man. Like, that's diverse. You know what I mean? It's not just the 27-year-old woman. So diversity has to mean like basically everyone. And Kevin, I've had a truly blessed career. I've had a truly blessed career, and I've been given a great opportunity, which is my platform, right? I was lucky enough to get a job at ESPN, and I was lucky enough that people at ESPN listened to me when I said, there's this thing called fantasy football that's really fun and we should try to promote it. And that went really well. And, I'm lucky that a number of people responded to my message. And now I'm on Football Night in America, which is the highest rated show on TV. And I have a large social media platform, and Fantasy Life newsletter has hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And so I'm lucky that I have a pretty big platform, and that there are a number of people that will listen to me. And so I think it's irresponsible of me not to use that platform for good in some ways. And, and so because I have the opportunity to help, I have the opportunity, whereas some people may not. They may not have the platform. They may not have the freedom at their job. I have the opportunity to help. And so I think it's important. I think I've been given this great opportunity, this role as one of the faces of our industry, for lack of a better way to phrase it. And so I think it's a responsibility that I take seriously and I don't take lightly. And I always talk about the fact that it is important to me to leave fantasy football in better shape than I found it. That fantasy football has been great to me. It has. Without fantasy football, I don't get to ESPN. Without fantasy football and ESPN, I don't meet my wife and I don't have my family. Without fantasy football, I'm not, I've been to the last 12 Super Bowls. That's because of fantasy football. Whatever. We can joke about it, but I'm in Avengers Endgame and we'll get to that at but I'm sure, you know what I mean? That's because of fantasy football. Almost every amazing experience that has happened to me in my life is in some way, shape, or form because of fantasy football, both professionally, personally, family-wise, is because of fantasy football, and it's paid me a nice salary, and I'm just, so I'm really blessed, and it's important to me to, give back, right, and
sure.
and do what I can to help, and so I have that platform, and so it's important for me to use that platform to promote younger people, to promote people that are doing good work but need more of a spotlight on what they're doing. It's something that I'm most proud about in my career, is that the kind of the Matthew Berry coaching tree, if you will, people who start that I have given to in their career or given a significant boost to in their career. A lot are known publicly because they started with me at TMR, or I helped get them hired at ESPN, or now some of the people that I'm hiring at Fantasy Life. But there's also ones privately. There are a number of people that have reached out to me privately that have said, hey, I'm going through a contract negotiation with, name the company, or hey, I need some advice on my career about this or that, and can we talk? And I always say yes, and we talk it through, and I'm never public about it. I will never share the names or the natures of those conversations, the ones that are private. But it's something that I do, and I'm happy to do it. And then, once you start down that path, you're like, okay, well, let's, I think it's important to make our industry a lot more diverse as well.
For sure. And I've had many DMs with you over the years where, watching you just looking to help other people. And it's great to see you're doing a great job with your platform.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. It's important to me. And I try to speak up. I think there are some companies in our space. I think there are some bad actors. There are a few, not a lot. There are a few companies in our space, and there are a few people in our industry that are bad apples, that try to take advantage of situations, that take advantage of people that aren't as savvy about business or as experienced, maybe, and maybe they're scared of repercussions, and so I try to kind of point that out because I can get away with it in a way that,
Let's switch gears. Talk about the Fantasy Life brand. You have assembled quite a group of Avengers at Fantasy Life. I've spent a lot of time with many of the people last couple years. In fact, just a couple weeks ago at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, they definitely. Everybody. Yeah, everybody.
Okay.
The whole team. They all stand out with that fantasy gear. Shout out to Sam Holt and some of her designs. Everybody, the whole team, outstanding people. And you got some big news at Fantasy Life last week. What does the support that you've generated with Fantasy Life from investors indicate to you about the future of the fantasy sports industry?
That the future of the fantasy sports industry and sports betting is really robust, and more importantly, it's just a confirmation of what we're building is something special. We're really excited about it. So it was important to us when we were raising money, is that we were very specific about who we raised money from. We had a number of people saying I'm rich here, and I'm like, I don't want just rich people. It is important to me that everyone that invests in Fantasy Life is strategic, and so obviously there was a lot of celebrities that invested. We had a lot of, I mentioned George Pine, Casey Wasserman, Maverick Carter, people that have built businesses, right? That have so aren't just people that were quote unquote born rich or something like that. They're people that have built businesses. So there's a lot of big names out there, but there are other people that if you looked at our cap table, we have experts in in SEO, in marketing, in advertising, and in social media, in building media companies off of newsletters and sports betting affiliate. Like, we have every single person on our cap table is there for a specific reason. We're a fantasy football newsletter. We wanted some fantasy football stars, so we got Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase. We feel like we've got a pretty good start to a fantasy football team with those four guys. And so I think it's important to, number one is it's important because it brings attention to us. Obviously, the brand equity that those people have because they're big fans. So we got written about quite a bit because of the fame of our investors and the names that are involved. But more importantly than that, I think it gives us credibility. I think it says, like, hey, this is something to pay attention to. Because I'm the fantasy guy, right? So when I say, hey, this is a robust space, this is a space where there's a really engaged audience, and people should spend money here, and people are there's revenue to be made here, and there's opportunity here, and this is a place for investment. When I say that, people are like, yeah, well, you're the fantasy guy. But when LeBron James and Maverick Carter, through their LRMR Ventures, their family office, when they invest, when somebody like John Legend, who gets pitched, everything under the sun, invest, when somebody like Chad Hurley, who's the co-founder of YouTube and the former CEO of YouTube, when he invests, when Tony Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars with his father Shad, when he invests, when guys like that invest, it signals like, or George Pine, or Casey Wasserman is chairman and CEO of Wasserman Media Company, and of course he's the chairman of the LA Olympic Committee. Like, when people of that caliber invest, that's a signal to the rest of the industry saying, like, hey, pay attention, because those guys are all smart guys who get pitched everything under the blue. You know what I mean? They every day, hey, you want to invest in this, you want to invest in this, you want to invest in this. And so when they have to be choosy. And so when those people say, we believe in Matthew Berry, we believe in Fantasy Life, we believe in what you're building, we believe in this space, that's a signal to, obviously, not just us and great affirmation for what we're building, but more importantly, it's a signal to the rest of the business world, not just the fantasy community, but the business world at large.
Yeah, it's great and it's outstanding. Why is it so important to you to have free tools and content that's not behind a paywall for fantasy consumers with Fantasy Life?
Yeah, I mean, it's a business decision, right? I mean, we specifically chose that. Free has been kind of a hallmark of my career. I have rotopass.com, which is a premium content offering. It's a bundle site. But my work on ESPN for much of my career was free. My work at Towns Mr. Roto before then was free. I didn't love being behind the paywall at ESPN. And my work at NBC is free and will always be free. That's literally in my contract here. And so that's been a hallmark of sort of what I do, and that I believe, I mean, part of it is a philosophy and sort of, my brand, for lack of a better way to phrase it. But part of it's also like, it's a business decision. Like, we think there's a glut, Kevin, of fantasy sites out there that have great tools, that have great content, that great analysts. And, how do you stand out? How do you stand out from a crowded field? And by the way, a talented crowded field. Like, I'm not going to sit here and throw stones and say, we're too many people come and say, I'm going to do it better because everyone else sucks. Like, no, there's a bunch. Like, we could go through names and I would tell you, that guy's good. She's great. That site does great work. That podcast is terrific. Like, there are a lot of great content creators in our space. Tons and tons. So the question is, how do we stand out? How do we differentiate ourselves? We're the new kids on the block. And yes, I have a nice platform. But the fact of the matter is like, that gets you through the door. Oh, I've heard of Matthew Berry. Let me go check it out. But if what they come and check out at fantasylife.com or the newsletter isn't any good, then they bail. So it's got to be quality. So how do we differentiate ourselves? And so for us, what we decided is we thought making everything free, taking all these tools that so many other companies put behind a paywall, making them free would be a point of differentiation for us. Because we know we've built a system that if we can get you into our ecosystem, whether it's on our site at fantasylife.com or in our newsletter, that we know how to monetize you in a way that, with marketing, with advertising, with sponsorship, with, potential upsells, with, click-based advertising as well. So it's for us, it's a business decision. We think we will make more money this way and be a better, and more importantly, be a better experience to the users, and than doing it any other way. So for us, it's about customer experience. And then, like I said, it's a business decision.
Yeah, it's been fun to see it burst onto the scene. So, I mean, Fantasy Life, it certainly embodies everything that we love about the fantasy football experience. What's your most memorable home fantasy football experience?
Oh, wow. I mean, in terms of, I mean, I have a league with a bunch of college buddies, and that, I've won that. There was I had a three. It's a dynasty league, and so I won that. I'm currently in a rebuilding phase, but I won that 3 years in a row, just fun. And I beat literally my best friend from college in the finals 3 years in a row.
Nice.
We would every year we would do a steak dinner bet, and he bought me big steak dinner 3 years in a row. So I mean, like that. I mean, I don't know if there's if you're looking for me, it's mostly just about being able to spend time with everyone and get to see friends that I normally wouldn't get to, that I probably would have lost touch with if it wasn't for these fantasy leagues. So getting to do that. I don't know that I have a great, we were all in Vegas, and I don't have one of those. There have been trips and that kind of stuff, but I don't know that there's one specific memory that, so I don't have a great story, if you will.
I think that makes sense. I mean, to me, the fantasy football experience is that, that the group together, the connections that are made. So it's not always just one event. So obviously there's so many ways to make leagues fun. The last place punishment's a good one. I know you guys just created a generator tool on the website at Fantasy Life. Are you guys excited about that?
Yeah, I think that's something original. We haven't seen that before. I'm somebody who, in my book Fantasy Life, which this is 2013, I popularized that. I'm not saying I invented last place punishments. I didn't, but it wasn't a thing yet. And I remember saying, I met the Tattoo League guys in Omaha, Nebraska, and they were like, and I discovered them, and I said, and they they wanted to put it out to a newspaper, a local newspaper. I said, listen, make you a deal. Don't reveal the year 2 and the year 3 loser tattoos. Don't do that yet. I said, my book's coming out. It's not coming out for 9 months. But I make you a deal. If you won't reveal it, if you'll wait till my book to reveal it, I will make you guys a thing. I will mention you in every press interview I do, and I'll make you guys a thing. And they said, okay, and they agreed, and they kept their word, and I kept mine. And I talked about, as I would do interviews, Fantasy League punishments is one of the things I would talk about quite a bit. We actually did a feature where we followed the Tattoo League on ESPN over the course of the season. We did a couple of different ones as well. They were the first league. It's now, it's been done a lot, but they were the first league to be a tattoo league, a tattoo. And so, just over the years, it's always been a thing where people send them to me and I retweet them, #Fantasy Life. My old show on ESPN, we used to do we did a segment called Don't Be This Guy. And every single show ended with a fantasy league punishment. That was a lot of fun. And so having this, it's now becoming tougher and tougher to top. So it's been cool. We developed this fantasy league punishment generator on fantasylife.com. Again, 100% free. That just, if you need an idea or just want to leave it to fate, you can use the generator. Presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, by the way. Shout out to our friends at Buffalo Wild Wings. They're a presenting sponsor of the generator.
Exactly. So I've been known to make the Fantasy Live draft pretty special. And so actually, you'll be happy to know that I'm taking the league to Buffalo Wild Wings this weekend because of that promo on fantasylife.com. So,
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Well, send me video of you guys at the league. I appreciate that.
I will, for sure. Now, obviously, another passion of yours is charity in fantasy sports. We shared an experience together playing in the Jimmy Buffett division, the Scott Fish Bowl a couple years back. How would you
were a good player too, by the way. You were annoyingly good. I got to give you credit. You were annoyingly good. I remember getting annoyed at you in the draft because you kept taking players that I wanted. So
I was sniped plenty of times by Matthew Berry, so that was a lot of fun. What's your advice on bringing the charity component to a fantasy football league?
Well, I don't think anyone does it better than Scott Fish. And the Scott Fish Bowl is such a wonderful event in our community. And so, again, just trying to do the right thing, trying to leave leave Earth better than I found it, leave fantasy better than I found it. I've been blessed with this great opportunity, so why not take advantage of it? And what we've discovered over the years is that Scott would tell me, Scott and I are friends, and he would tell me, I get more requests for people to be in your league than anyone else or whatever. And so I'm like, well, let's take advantage of that. Let's, like, as opposed to you having to sift through all these people begging to be in a league with me, let's make them pay and raise some money for charity. And so, I think the year you were in, we raised, $12,000 for the Jimmy V Foundation. This year we raised $12,000 for the Sarah Foundation, which is a foundation here close to my home. They're based here in Connecticut as well, and they help people with disabilities kind of live adult lives. And it's really important for families that are in those situations, and letting people that may have a disadvantage live more of a full life, and helping them getting jobs and going to school. And it's a wonderful foundation, and I'm not going to do a good job of promoting it, but you can check it out at the Sarah Foundation. I think it's sarahfoundation.org. But anyway, yeah, so it's important for me to try to do what I can to help. I do cameos now. I mean, Cameo's been after me forever, saying we get a lot of requests for you to do draft orders, trash talk, what have you. Can we get you on the platform? I'm just like, and then I thought, well, you know what? If I could do these cameos for charity, then that's a thing. And so we've raised a nice amount of money for charity through Cameo. So people book me on Cameo, and I do the, I do their draft order. I do a trash talk video. I do a, celebration, a pep talk. There's all sorts of different things they ask me to do, and so that's been fun as well.
That's great. It's great. Now, you have had many unique experiences over the years, again, through fantasy, right? You've been on the Tonight Show. You've broadcasted from Radio Row to Super Bowl, Kentucky Derby, exclusive parties, countless NFL interviews, and you are possibly the highest grossing actor all time on a per movie basis, following your role as a SHIELD agent in Marvel's Endgame. What experience has been the most surreal for you?
I mean, it's that one, right? It's being in Avengers Endgame, right? So, I mean, specifically for me, and all of it, by the way, is pinch me stuff. All of it's ridiculous. None of it. I mean, and I could just list, the fact that, for the last decade, I've gone to a fantasy football draft where I sit next to Jay-Z. Like, I've done that for a decade now. It's stupid. It's insane. And, so there's a million things like that, and played in a fantasy league with a bunch of those Avengers, and played in fantasy leagues with a bunch of celebrities. I mean, John Legend invested in Fantasy Life because he thought it was a good investment, and we went through his people. But the way I got to John was I'm in a fantasy league with John. Like, I know John, So, I mean, fantasy has brought me, so many incredible experiences. And like I said, it brought me to ESPN, where I met my wife, and we have our family together. But I think, to me, the most surreal is certainly Avengers Endgame. I'm a crazy fan of the MCU, of Marvel movies. So it's not just that I'm in a movie, or even at a high-grossing movie. I'm in, the movie for me, right? Again, Avengers Endgame, for people that follow the MCU, it was 10 years in the making. It was 20-plus films in the making, all leading up to Avengers Endgame, the end of this saga. And so the fact that I was in that movie specifically, that I got to not only be in a movie with lines and with Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, and Robert Redford, big movie stars, you know what I mean? And that's the scene. It's the four of us. It's the old Sesame Street thing. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things doesn't belong. It's three massive movie stars and freaking me. And that's the scene. And so that's the most surreal thing. That's the most surreal thing, is that, was going to a movie theater and holy crap, that's me. I'm on the big screen, and I'm this close to Tony Stark, right? To Robert Downey Jr. And then it was Avengers Endgame. People have said to me, oh, is that a bucket list moment? Bucket list. And I'm like, what? No, bucket list. Are you? No, you can't.
It's not on a bucket. Yeah.
Right, it's not on a bucket. You can't sit there. You know what I'd like to do before I die is be in a Marvel movie. No, I got to climb a mountain, or whatever, take a cruise around the world, or whatever. You can't put that on a bucket list. So the fact that it actually, happened, and that's the most surreal thing ever, was that that I'm not only in a movie, but I'm in that movie.
Yeah.
And that movie, yes, ended up becoming the highest grossing movie of all time worldwide. And
There you go.
allowed me to become the highest grossing actor on a per movie basis. So, which is fun. And it was the story that I told on the Tonight Show, and that went well. And so, anyway, great.
Yeah.
That's the most real thing.
Yeah, it was so funny. I remember I was at a park with my daughter. I got a message from my friend John, who actually went to Bristol with me, saying, I think Matthew Berry's in Endgame. And I hadn't seen it yet. And I messaged you immediately. You're like, yep. I didn't believe him, but there we go.
Yeah, well, what's so funny is that I wasn't allowed. They were so, I don't know if anyone remembers the campaign around the movie, but it was one of these things that like Thanos demands your silence. Like, hey, no spoilers. People have been, waiting literally a decade for this movie. It's a culmination, no spoilers. And in fact, LaShawn McCoy got into a bunch of trouble, including with me, because he spoiled the ending of Endgame just on his Twitter, just like a jerk. But anyway, not a LaShawn McCoy fan ever since. But what I will tell you is like Disney and Marvel was said to me, like, you can't confirm, like, you're not allowed to say you're in the movie until after opening weekend. Like, so it opened on a Thursday. And I'm like, well, what about on Friday? They're like, nope, no spoilers, no acknowledgement. They were like, listen, you are a surprise for some people. Not everyone's going to recognize you, but there will be a group of people that recognize you, and that's going to be a nice, fun moment for, oh, holy crap, Matthew Berry's in the movie. And there's a number of cameos throughout the movie of, there's various people. And they're like, we want all that to be a surprise. So absolutely not. So like Thursday night, my Twitter, and even Tuesday night, because they had some early screenings, my Twitter's blowing up all week. Dude, did I just see you in Avengers Endgame? Dude, are you Hydra or are you SHIELD? Like all this stuff. And I can't respond. I'm not allowed to even acknowledge, yes, that is me. It's, it was such a, so it was just driving me crazy. And finally on Tuesday, okay, good. Yes, that is me. I can finally talk about it. So
fun. Well, let's dive into some no huddle, no limits, rapid fire questions. We'll fly through these. What Avengers from the Agbo League were the most into fantasy football?
Paul Rudd is really into it. Chris Pratt is really into it. Joe Russo, the director, is very into it. And Anthony Mackie, who plays Falcon, he's pretty into it. So those are the guys that I think were the most sort of hardcore players in it. Oh, Chris Evans. Chris Evans is really into it too. So those are the five guys that like are really the most hardcore, I think.
And who won that league?
Pratt won the last year we played.
Okay.
Chris Pratt won. Yeah.
Nice.
I lost in the semifinals to Simu Liu because freaking Eric Ebron and the Bengals on a game, rain game. And I literally needed 10 points from Eric Ebron, and he didn't get it to beat Simu Liu. And because he got a concussion and then he left the game and he was done. And I don't think even, it was like something like 6 points, something simple that and he'd hit that number like in 5 straight weeks and then whatever. But he dropped an easy pass that would have done it. It was like he had like something 2 or 3 points and I don't remember exactly. But anyway, he left that game early and I was just like, ah. So I lost to Simu Liu, from Shang-Chi, and then he lost to Pratt in the finals.
Okay.
That's super annoying.
Who's the greatest trash talker you've ever seen in a fantasy league?
I mean, Jay-Z's pretty good. Jay-Z's really good. So is Irv Gotti, Murder Inc. Irv Gotti. He's in that same league, the Guts League. So all the guys in the Guts League are really good trash talkers. So Jay is great. They all are. So that would probably be my Michael Rappaport too. I was in the Howard Stern Show League for a number of years, and Rappaport is kind of insane when it comes to the trash talk.
I could see that. What's the definitive TMR stance on trade vetoes?
No, never veto. It is. You should be allowed to coach your team, even if it's badly. It's all just opinions on players, and you never know in value changes like that. And so the only way you veto is if you can literally prove that there's collusion. But if there's no collusion, then if you can't prove collusion, every trade must stand, no matter how ridiculous it seems to you. People should be allowed to coach their teams, even if it's badly.
There it is. Your thoughts on tempting the fantasy gods and fantasy karma?
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. It's a real thing. I've been in this business a long time. I've been playing this game for over 3 decades. Weird stuff happens. Just you don't want to mess with it. Don't want to mess with it.
I love it. As a competitive tennis player as a kid, do you have an official stance on the sport of pickleball?
I don't have an official sport on it. I haven't played it. I mean, I know a lot of people do. Everyone tells me it's great. I want to get out there. I think I'd enjoy it as a former tennis player. I guess my stance is like good. Anything that gets people outside, exercising, enjoying, spending time with each other, great. People I know that play pickleball love it. So it's awesome.
It seems like it. No, it's definitely a craze. How do you handle criticism when it comes to fantasy football analysis and predictions?
I mean, sometimes it depends on the criticism and how it's delivered and how accurate the criticism is. Sometimes I handle it poorly and I get annoyed. I'm definitely a lot better at handling it now than I was when I first started up. When it first started up, or when Twitter first started, when social media started. So I'm definitely a lot better at handling it now, and I just sort of don't engage. I don't read a lot. Like I don't read a lot of my mentions. I don't read a lot of whatever Reddit threads about me or whatever. I just So I try just to, ignore it. It's one of those things where you're kind of like, did you have a good reason for making, there's sometimes where you just miss it. And there'll be times where you look back and go, why did I miss it? Oh, you know what? That was something I should have not noticed and I didn't. And I just missed it. But there are other times where it's just like, it's as my friend Joe Bryant likes to say, it is a sport played with a leather ball in an oblong shape. Weird stuff happens. And there are times where I have a lot of contacts now. And there have been times where I've been point blank told by an NFL coach, like by an offensive coordinator, this guy's getting the ball. We've discovered something in our game plan this week. We've discovered a flaw in their defense. We think we can exploit it. This guy's going to have a monster game. And so I'll go on TV and I'll say I got a gut feeling, or looking at the numbers, I won't reveal my sources. I'll say this guy's going to have a really good game. And whatever, guy has a false start and then, drops, he's a wide receiver and then he drops an easy ball on the second play. And, next thing he winds up with, 3 for 15. And the quarterback's like, I'm not looking at guys way anymore. And it's so, what are you going to do?
There you go.
So I try to just ignore it and let it go and just kind of not take it personally. I will say this, and this is a weird thing. I have noticed a lot less of it since I left ESPN. I definitely think there are people out there that just genuinely, for whatever reason, have really strong feelings towards ESPN, and that if you're on ESPN, you sort of get painted with that brush, rightfully or wrongfully. And so I have certainly noticed less vitriol towards me since I have left ESPN.
Interesting. Will there ever be a follow-up to the New York Times best-selling book, Fantasy Life?
Maybe. I don't know. I've been asked about it a lot, and I think there's certainly interest from book publishers. Writing's a bitch, man. It takes a lot out of me. It takes a lot of me to do my weekly column, and so it's one of those. So I don't know. What the free time I get, the non-NBC free time that I get these days are spent in only 2 areas: my family and building Fantasy Life. Literally, that's all I spend my time on. So
that totally makes sense for sure. Now, if you had to assemble a fantasy team based only off player personalities, who would be your top picks?
A fantasy team based only on personalities? You mean the personalities of the NFL players?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Let me think about. I would say quarterback. I'm going to say Josh Allen. Josh Allen's got a pretty good personality. Running back wise, Jamal Williams is absolutely there. Let's see, Saquon. I'm just thinking about people I've interviewed that I've really liked. Saquon was a great interview, so I'll go Saquon and Jamal Williams. Wide receiver, I really love talking to CeeDee Lamb. I've interviewed him before. George Kittle at tight end. George Kittle is awesome.
Yeah.
Let me think of another tight end that I've interviewed that I would say Austin Eckler is my flex. Eckler's a great personality. He loves fantasy. So I'll put proud fantasy life investor, Austin Eckler. And then what do I have left? Probably one more wide receiver. Trying to think of like who I absolutely love. One of my all-time favorite interviews I've ever done. Mac Hollins. Okay. Mac Hollins is great. Really liked him. Really enjoyed it. I talked to Michael Wilson this year. Really liked him. Really liked Marvin Mims this year in terms of guys that I just like personality-wise. But there you go. There's a couple of bench spots for you too.
That's perfect. What's your favorite column or piece of content that you create, like 100 Facts or Love Hate, Draft Day Manifesto, or just like selecting your ride or die?
100 Facts is my favorite column to write every year. That's the fun one. There are Love Hates that I really love, that I really like, that I enjoy. Specific columns that I could tell you that one's one of my favorites. That one's one of my favorites. But in terms of which of the columns I like the most, it's 100 Facts. In terms of content that I've created, just in general, not written, but just in general, the fantasy show. The thing that I enjoyed the most was the fantasy show on ESPN Plus, the puppet show, because we just did the dumbest stuff. We were like, we're on ESPN Plus, let's just whatever. Well, we're just gonna make they'll probably get canceled in 6 weeks, whatever. Let's just make ourselves laugh. And we did over 300 episodes. We were the highest rated show on ESPN Plus. We were there for 5 years. We'd have kept going had I stayed at ESPN. But like every single day we would say like, okay, this is the dumbest thing we've ever done in our lives. And then the next day we'd be like, okay, no, I take it back. This is the dumbest thing we've ever done. And every day we just sort of kept topping it and just so many dumb things, but really fun. Our mantra on that show was, give us 20 or so minutes and we promise to make you a smarter fantasy player and a much dumber person. And we lived by that. So that was always, I really enjoyed that. And the piece of content that I'm most proud of is the book. Is that when I was out there pitching the book, I want to write it. I want to write a book. I want to write a book that is two things. Number one is about sort of the story of my life. And then I also want to write a book about fantasy and the life of fantasy football, like the community, the funny rules, the last place punishments, the crazy obsession, the cheating scandals, all this stuff. And some of the book publishers were like, let me get this straight. You want to write a book about fantasy football that doesn't have one piece of advice in it? And I said, correct. I said, because advice changes all the time. It needs to be evergreen. It needs to be something that you could pick. Fantasy Life came out in 2013, but you could pick it up today, 10 years later, and it still resonates. The names, you might not recognize as many names, but like in terms of football players, but like the stories are all, one of the stories in there is there's a league in Brooklyn, New York, where the loser of the league has to dress as a lion and the rest of the league chases him with paintball guns. Right. That's funny. That'll be funny 10 years from now. That'll be funny 20 years from now. It's just funny. And so so I was just like, yes, that's the book I want to do. And they would all say to me, they go, well, listen, not all of them, but some of the ones that the responses that I get would be like, well, we think the only reason you're popular, we know you're popular, you have a big audience, but we think the reason so many people read your column is because it's on ESPN, it's free, and it's full of fantasy advice. We don't think anyone's going to walk into a store and plunk down $27 for a hardback book of yours that has no fantasy advice. The other thing is that the majority of people that buy books are women. Men don't buy nearly as many books, and we don't think any woman knows who you are. So we're not. So we don't think anyone's going to be interested in your life. And I got pass after pass after pass. And finally, there were a couple of people that were interested as well. And Penguin, Riverhead Books, which was an imprint of Penguin. Shout out to super editor Matt Boyd. Matt Boyd really liked the idea. He was a fan of mine. He was a fantasy player. And so he went and he's pitching to the president, whoever decides books at Penguin, and just saying like, no, I'm telling you, I think this guy's a really good writer and he's popular. And I think this book will do well. And we should really do it. We should do it. And the woman's like, well, I don't know. So the person he's pitching to is a woman. And so she's like, I don't know. And all of a sudden, some woman is walking by their office. I don't know her name. Elizabeth, hey, come here for a second. So Elizabeth walks in, and this woman, the president, she says to Elizabeth, whoever she is, "Hey, you know who Matthew Berry is?" And she goes, "The fantasy football guy? Wasn't he on the league?" And Matt Boyd goes, "Yes, he was." She's like, and then the president's like, "All right, thank you very much, Elizabeth. You can do the book." So thank you wherever Elizabeth is, wherever. But by the way, the book then debuted at number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list. Spent multiple months on the list. Did really, really well. Well into 6 figures of books sold, and so did really, really well for me. So that's the thing I'm most proud of, because it was me. It wasn't ESPN pushing it. It was just me alone in a room for 2 years, and I was told no one's going to buy this book, and then people came out and bought it in droves, and so. That's the thing I'm most proud of professionally.
I love it. No, it's definitely something to be proud of. Obviously, it's catapulted you to experience so many wonderful things, and I'm so happy for you watching you on this journey. Is there anything you want to add before we close things out on this episode?
No, just that here's what I would add. I would say to anyone listening to this, number one is be kind. Be kind. Even though fantasy football and sports betting continue to grow in popularity and get more and more mainstream, there are still people that aren't fans. There are still states that are arguing about us. There are still states where we can't play. There are still people that think it's niche, people that think it's bad, people that think it's not right for TV or this integration or that integration. We still have enemies. So the last thing we need to do is fight among ourselves. Like, we need to be a united front as we continue to grow the game, popularize the game, invite more people in. Don't be dismissive. Don't talk down to people. Don't, be inclusive. As many people under the, we want kids and grandmas. We want people from all, races, shapes, kinds, nationalities, everyone. Like, stop talking about your algorithm and your plus EV, record and whatever. Just talk in normal language to people, and don't try to be the smartest person in the room. Just, that's what I would say is, and focus on creating great content for yourself, and for your fans, as opposed to trying to tear somebody else down. So that would be my big piece of advice. And, I'm appreciative of you and everyone's support of Fantasy Life, fantasylife.com. And what I would tell you is that when Elliot and I started the company, I started the company and hired Elliot. And as we started to build it, I said, here's my rule. No assholes. I said, we're gonna build a good company. We're gonna hire good people, but my number one rule is no assholes. I don't care how popular they are or how much revenue they may bring us. We are not, every single person, we're not allowed to have any assholes. Everyone on the team has to be a good person. And so far we're 13 for 13. We've got 13 full-time employees. We've got a number of contributors. All of them have passed the no asshole rule. So that's important to me, and check out all my stuff over at NBCsports.com. Come check us out on Peacock or wherever you get your podcasts for Fantasy Football Happy Hour.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it's an amazing team you've assembled. Can't wait to see what's next. In honor of all your success, all of the fantasy football drafts coming up this weekend, the future of fantasy sports, and the upcoming 2023 football season.
There we go.
Well, cheers to you, my friend. Keep climbing that mountain, and I can't wait to see where it takes you and where you take the amazing industry next.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you very much.
I love it.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.